Today, though, I'm really excited, and I couldn't be more happy about who I get to interview as my last interviewee. I met Melanie probably about 3 years ago. And I met her because I put on, for Denver Startup Week, I had some panels I participated in, and the one that you always remind me about is this corporate detox panel. It was not in corporate, I was a teacher, but somehow got asked to be on the panel. And it was a pretty pivotal point in her time. And so she sought us out and has been a member ever since. And Melanie is just a joy to be around, and watch me start crying. When I cry way too often. And more importantly, it's been so neat to watch what she's doing. And it's been a pleasure to be able to be by her side. I put that lightly because it's all her, but from afar, being by her side from afar and getting to sort of be aware and in her orbit of what she's doing, because I think what she's doing is pretty freaking amazing and is going to really, make a huge wave in her industry. This month's theme is confidence empowerment. And so we wanted Melanie here for two reasons. Three. One, she's fabulous, and I love her. Two, for those of you, actually, I don't want to ruin what you're going to talk about. She works in a male-dominated field, and I think part of confidence and empowerment is dealing with how you feel when you're an other, when you're in an environment that feels different than you're like feeling safe and comfortable with your people, and I think Melanie can really speak to that, so I'm excited for that. And then three, she knows what it takes to be in startup phase, right? And some of the woes of that and some of the feelings that bubbles up. And, a lot of times people ask me, what classes do I need to take to go be an entrepreneur and start a company? I'm like, just do a lot of self-work. Just go get a good counselor, because that's really what you need, is that confidence empowerment to keep going. And she's going to do a beautiful job speaking about all that today. So I'm so glad you're here, Melanie.
Thank you.
And I know two of you, this is a new programming for you. Something we always do is we like to start, instead of me reading her bio, which is very impressive, and just go on LinkedIn, but I'm too ADD for that, clearly. I like to instead start the meeting by talking about her first job and her current job, because I think it's sort of a nice way to dive in and learn a little something and some fun facts about people. So what was your first job, Melanie?
Well, my first job, I was at Cold Stone Creamery, and I was over in Denver West. I'm a Colorado native, very proud of that. And they were opening up the new Cold Stone Creamery, and one of my friends who was on the lacrosse team got a job there, and she said, hey, if you want your friends to join, I'll hire everybody. And so we all went down there, and she hired like 8 of my friends. And so I got to work with my friends. I quickly got promoted to manager. So at age 16, I was managing the drawer. I was going in and opening up the store and kind of doing some of those managerial roles, almost so quickly, that I think gave me some confidence that she saw in me to be responsible.
Do you still eat ice cream?
Oh, well, I had to leave that because I love candy. I was a candy kid growing up, so I thought this is my dream job. Until you realize how much you're just eating candy, and so I had to move on from that. But we had a lot of fun at work too. You would put money in the tip jar and everyone would sing, and I would make my crew sing, right? And so I think we just realized that you can have fun at work, you can make money doing it, and that when people trust you, you get more responsibility. So I learned that really young.
That's impressive. And then you went from that to where are you today? You have 2 hats.
I call it my mortgage paying job, which is I'm a regulatory consultant for energy companies. I help them kind of navigate the regulatory landscape for environmental, health, and safety compliance. Kind of a boring job description. I am still working on Amy's punch of elevator speech for that one.
Making it sexy and glamorous.
But my real passion is now my company called EMBHER. And we are a clothing line of flame-resistant clothing for women. And for those of you that don't know, flame-resistant clothing is personal protective equipment. And it is required for oil and gas workers, some chemical manufacturing, some other job roles in the industrial field that require you to be really outfitted to protect yourself from the hazards.
And we know how sexy those outfits are.
Exactly. Well, historically, and to this point, really have been based off of menswear. And I spent a lot of years in these scratchy coveralls, and really trying to show that confidence when you feel just less than comfortable in what you're wearing. So yeah, that's really my passion these days. And I think, you know, the kickstart for me was really meeting you and the women at Rise who have these ideas, have a dream, and actually go do it and make it happen. And when you're around that, you're like, oh, wait, I got this idea. I think I can do this. And then you do, and you just navigate. And so.
Well, and that's the talk this morning I did before this. The advice I got is if you don't define your community will define you. And, you know, when you're around dreamers and the people that are out there, you're like, wait, she's not that different from me. If she can do it, I can do it. So I love that you saw that and that has played a role in your path. Before we get to all the amazing things about EMBHER, I want to back up because I think, you know, a lot of us are having to navigate different paths. While yes, this is a women community, men are part of the world and we love men. And we're not anti-men. But there's still challenges. You know, I'll be honest, I have been spoiled to be mainly around women for the past 5 or 6 years. And about a year ago, I attended another networking organization that was co-ed. I'm not going to name them because I'm not here to trash anybody. But it was a jarring experience because within like the first 5 minutes, some guy got on Zoom and told this like sexual innuendo joke about ice cream. And it was like, I'm in a professional networking atmosphere and what's happening? Like, this is shocking to me. And when I said something afterwards, they were like, it was just a joke. And I was like, okay, no, that's just not for me. So I had taken for granted how difficult it can be to navigate the world of, you know, male dominated. So when we talk about confidence empowerment, I think it's really helpful from your perspective. So I'm curious what your career has been like and how you've navigated this very male dominated, you know, energy, oil and gas, very male dominated.
Yeah,
and you've obviously been highly successful. So like, what's the secret to your success?
And you know, and I kind of fell into it, honestly. I got hired from a temp agency as a receptionist to answer phones. And it was a summer job. I was here, you know, on break from school. And I just thought that was all it was going to be. But I met these really smart people in this really fascinating industry, solving this complex problem of bringing energy, you know, to the world. Pretty cool. And so I actually decided to stay on with them. They offered me a full-time job as the receptionist, and then they offered to pay for my school. So that was huge for me. They paid 100% for my undergrad. And then I went on to graduate school and got my master's degree in environmental policy. And they also paid for that. Perks they don't do today. But I kind of took advantage of that. But I didn't really realize that I was in this male-dominated industry until you really kind of get away from the front desk and kind of the mail room and some of those admin functions. And then I quickly realized that I was not only the only female in the room, but I was probably the youngest. And so, you know, you actually kind of emulate what's around you. And there was a couple of actually strong females that were there that I was able to kind of look to for emulating what they're doing and what they're wearing.
Yeah.
I mean, in hindsight, it's really looking back is a lot about what we're wearing. And I joke because at Rise, we wear dresses. And
everyone does. And it's only because I can't put outfits together. It's a lot easier to put a dress on than dress clothes.
And I joke about that. I think this is the first time I've worn a dress at Rise in a long time, right? But I felt like Stacy's kind of set that tone, and I really wanted to feel like I was fitting in with that. And one easy way to do that is through clothing. Yeah. And so I find that that's interesting now that I feel my clothing is going to change the way women feel in the field. And that's the empowerment piece.
Oh, I love that.
Right? Mm-hmm. That's saying, wow, actually when I showed up in scratchy clothes in the field, there was nothing I could do to show my personality or to show my authority, right? I was there to teach them something. And then you look down and you've got these frumpy coveralls on. Like it's too bad that it's taken this long. But I'm really happy that it's me that gets to do this because
it is so important.
It is.
And I think with fashion, we often look at fashion as like a vanity or, you know, or whatever, just something that shouldn't be something that makes an impact. But look, this is an Amazon dress. It was $30. I'm not cutting edge fashion. I'm always at the end of the trend. You know, I got to skinny jeans by time now we're away from skinny jeans. But I think what people forget about fashion is, to your point, of what you put on affects how you feel. And if you feel amazing in jeans and, you know, whatever, awesome, rock that. But if you feel good, you know, and so I love that you're being really, the key for me is this intentionality. Like and I think when we had, I'm blanking on her name, how's the color?
Heather.
Heather, thank you. I think that's Heather's message, right?
Yes.
You know, when do you feel your best and how can you stay there? And so I think that's really important. And so is that the advice? I mean, I definitely want to talk about EMBHER, but for people that are walking into situations where, whether it's male dominated or, you know, sometimes I walk into a room where I feel like this person's so much more advanced than me, or like I'm intimidated by them, you know, or something where you have that shrinking effect of like, why am I here? I'm not good enough. You know, you've obviously had to face that. How have you gotten over that? Or how have you, like, I mean, I know you said fashion is one of the ways.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's really helped you. Are there other things that you've done?
Yeah, I absolutely think it's knowing your stuff too, right? You got to know and be confident that you know what you're talking about. So like going into a meeting, especially in regulatory, it's kind of black and white. You can either do it or you don't, right? And so I was very confident to know the rules and what I was talking about. And so when I got into a situation where I, you know, was so confident that this is the direction you have to go, it was really easy. But when I found I was being challenged by like another female, and I found that was interesting, right? And that she was not giving me the credibility that I deserved. So it wasn't necessarily the men.
Yeah.
It was kind of that, you know, situation at first was like, well, that's really not what I would have expected when you get into kind of some of those different groups. But I think, you know, being confident that you know your stuff and making sure people know why you're there. And that, and I think that's contributing, right? You just contribute.
Stepping up and having a voice.
And making sure that they know that you're there for a reason. You're not just sitting there. That you have a seat at the table for a reason, and make sure that you can contribute to that, even if it's one small comment. Because again, I was usually in a group of people older than me, especially, you know, ranked higher than I was. And so they always knew why I was there. And I have a little spin on this being a note taker, right? I always felt like that was a role that I just took on. And then I realized the reason I was taking it on, because I was definitely better than anyone else in the room at taking notes, right? Everybody was very happy with my detailed notes. But I also got to drive the agenda. And I also got to talk to every single person in that room if I had a question about something in the meeting. And there was a reason that I got to do that. If I was just sitting there taking notes, but otherwise I could drive the agenda, you could drive those relationships with people. And then they had confidence in you.
And you know what that reminds me of is Sheryl Sandberg talks about how, and look, I know everyone has different feelings about her, and I'm not saying that she's not, her message has flaws, but something that stood out to me about her, she would say, you know, women sometimes are offended when men will stand and not sit down until a woman sits down. That's just something that is a tradition in some situations that in some ways, I guess for some people is offensive. And okay, fair. But she was like, I looked at that as an advantage. Like I have control of this and they're looking to me. So that I sort of hear some of that same kind of philosophy of how do I optimize a situation I'm in? Because, you know, at the end of the day, it is what it is.
And watch what they do. If they take off their jacket and sit down, take off your jacket and sit down because they're more comfortable, right? You kind of navigate what, again, emulate kind of what's happening around you. And I think that brings up an awareness piece, right? If you're aware of kind of what's going on, and I think being the only female and, you know, you have a little bit heightened awareness of your posture and how you're carrying. And I think you can use that to your advantage. There's a book that I love called The Feminist Fight Club. And
that is a good book.
It's not for everybody. There's some bad words in the very beginning. So if you're, you know, just so you know. But I think what I learned from that, and we introduced that book in this women's group that I was in, trying to create some conversation around how do we get the men around us to support each other, right? Or to support us. And there was a couple little nuggets in there that I took from it. And that's one of them is having a wingman. And it could be a woman, but it's literally a guy that you go to before the meeting and say, hey, this is what I'm going to talk about. This is what I think we're going to drive to a decision point. I need you to support me at this point. And then everyone else kind of follows.
That amplification.
Exactly. And just do it subtly, but you plant that before, and it really works to your advantage when you're coming to those big decisions. Especially if you've built that trust and you have the confidence in what you're saying and what you're doing. Once you got one guy there, right?
Well,
but he learns how to support you then. He learns if you tell him what you need,
this is what I need.
They can support you, but they don't always know how to support successful women, alpha women.
And they're not mind readers.
Right.
Well, and something you said, I want to back up a little bit, I'm really nerdy about social science and studying and those kind of things. And there's actual research to show that we have these things called mirror neurons. And so these people studied it, and they found that if you were sitting in a restaurant over there and I'm sitting here, and if I just very subtly am like mirroring your body language and doing the things that you're doing, they actually did this as an experiment. It sounds creepy, but really. And just in their eye line, that person 9 times out of 10 would walk past on the way out and be like, oh, do I know you? Because we're wired in such a way for safety. You know, think about that prehistoric brain of fight or flight. And, you know, we feel the most safe with ourselves. And so when you're getting your behavior mirrored back to you, it's those mirror neurons kicking in and being like, oh, I like this person. So I love that in this moment of uncomfortableness, instead of fixating on that, you fixated on something that actually is going to help the situation. Like, are they leaning in? Are they being loud and boisterous? Are they being quiet? I think that's brilliant. And now there's science and research to show that is the absolute right thing to do, even though in some ways it feels icky to be like mimicking, but I think you can do it subtly. It's not like she puts her arms like this and I immediately like, you know, like there's some subtleness to it, but it is an important thing. So I love that you bring that up.
Yeah.
You know, it sounds like you in some ways are naturally confident and naturally a go-getter, which I think is a very admirable quality. But I think so often when we have these conversations, there's people in the audience who, you know, I'm not naturally confident. I'm actually really, you know, we're typing more secure and all those things. And so like the things that you're saying wouldn't have necessarily come natural to me. And so I'm curious if you have advice for those people, because like, you know, I'll be honest, I still have those moments of feeling imposter syndrome. Like I'm still having that, even though I'm talking to CEO of Nextdoor, I still have these moments of like, oh, why is she talking to me? Do you have those moments, and how do you push past those? Or do you not, because you're just how you're wired?
No, yeah, and I think there's 2 things. I mean, yes, I have this imposter syndrome of, gosh, you know, I don't know anything about making clothing, but I'm going to go do it, right? And it's because it needs to be done. And of course it's going to be me that does that.
Yes.
I'm the perfect person to do this. I'm the person that we're solving the problem for. That's when you know you are the right person to build the community. You have that personality.
Yeah.
But when I go back, you know, it was something my dad had told me a long time ago. We were at a dinner party. I was probably 5 years old, and I wore my shoes on the wrong feet until I was like age 6. My parents tried so hard. Yes.
You just like how it felt? Like to be like
as a choice. Yes, because they would put like L and R on like your foot and your shoe to like match up. And I don't know what it was. I just needed like maybe something tight. I don't know what it was. But my dad tells this story of me. We're at this dinner party and I'm sitting there on the couch and my feet, you know, my shoes are like this. And I look over and I said, Charlotte, do you work outside of the home? And she looked at, this is one of my dad's best friends from like, you know, 40 years ago. And she said, well, Melanie, I do work outside of the home. And we had this conversation, and it was like, she treated me as an adult because I asked this adult question. And then, you know, we would travel and we would go to the hotel or motel, and there would always be a swimming pool. And I would go around and within 30 minutes know where everyone was from, where they were traveling to, the kids' names, like I had everything kind of figured out. And so reflecting on that, I think I've never had a chance when I broke the ice with somebody, or I, you know, sitting awkwardly next to a student in class, and you lean over and you say, hey, have you ever had this professor before? And they're like, oh, I have. Or no, I haven't. Have you? And you break that ice and immediately you have a conversation with somebody. And I think I've never had a bad response from somebody when you say something to them first. And I think that's what got me just so used to just breaking that silence for somebody. Because for a lot of people, it's awkward to do that, even though you want to.
Totally.
And so I challenged my sister, who's not like me at all in that regard, to say, just try it, just do it, just break that ice and see what happens. And when you get that positive reinforcement, because it feels good to talk to people, it just became natural. And so I think that's where probably early on, I just always felt comfortable because the response was always positive. And if somebody didn't want to talk, they're not going to like not talk to you. They're gonna politely
exit
the conversation, you know?
Well, and look, I can't stand working out. I hate how it feels. It doesn't happen as much as it should. But we all know we need to work out. We all know we feel better when we work out, but it's an active choice that we have to make that sometimes we love more than others, right? And that's what I'm hearing you say. It's like, it's almost like a better version of fake it till you make it. Like you're not, sometimes that phrase gets muddied. And what I'm hearing you say is like, whether this is a natural thing or not a natural thing, get after it.
Try it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it works.
Yeah. And just make it a practice and make it a goal. And I think that's really good advice. And so switching gears, I get you a lot of time. Switching gears to, so, here Melanie is, a leader in her industry, sitting at the table with all these amazing people, and comes to Denver Startup Weekend and it has this idea to start this company. What has that journey been like? And I would imagine going from like, I've climbed the ladder, I'm successful in my career, to like, now I'm going off the deep end and doing something I've never done in my life. And I'm back to that like beginner phase. How did that affect your confidence and how have you been navigating that?
That's a great question, because I think the impetus that really started that was Startup Week, because I was learning that there are tools out there, free and available for entrepreneurs. And Denver is one of the best places to start a business, honestly. The entrepreneur community is so strong with resources that it's now connecting the dots. And I was always one that could connect the dots between groups and people and all of that. And that's what I feel like this is. And if you've got the resources, I'm willing to learn anything.
Yeah.
Right. I was just sharing with Stacy, I'm taking a technical design and pattern making class. It's a 14-week certificate course because I don't know that portion of the clothing business. I can learn fabric, right? You can learn how things feel and the technical things of that, but to really be able to direct somebody or know whether they have good skills, I feel like I need to learn that. And so I think that goes back to being confident and knowing what you know. If you don't know, go learn it or ask somebody. And then if you don't know it, don't pretend like you know it, right? And so,
but I think I'm gonna pause you. I think people do that because it's like, oh, well, if people realize I don't know what I'm doing, and if I ask for help, then they're gonna think I'm an idiot. Yeah. But it's funny because it's like the opposite.
Right. And I, I love asking questions, and I have always done that as a probe to just get out of people. There's science behind the 5 whys.
Yeah.
You get to the root cause of something through 5.
Yeah.
Well, why? Well, why?
Yeah.
Well, why? And then you get down to that, right? That's asking questions. Another book I love is called A More Beautiful Question. And it's about asking questions to get to a breakthrough innovation solution. It is so good. It was written a long time ago, and not that long, but it's the methodology around asking questions to really get a breakthrough solution, I think is good, right? You ask the question. And so I'm asking questions of these people that have never been asked. Well, why can't we have another zipper? Why can't we do that? Why? And they're like, well, that's just not how it's done. I'm like,
because I think it takes courage and confidence to ask those questions.
And it's the right questions too, right? It's really coming from a place of naivety almost, right? Like I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah.
And so that's why I feel if I'm going to get more informed, I can ask some more informed questions.
Yeah.
And that makes me feel more confident that I'm asking the right stuff. And you can see this journey of navigating what you don't know and what you do know and putting those together, and then adding people that are professionals into the mix, I think is so important. That's why marketing people, you have to have a good marketing team so that they can do what they need to do while I'm still trying to solve, all these problems.
And obviously a lot of people who start businesses, yourself and myself included, we're type A, you've had results, right? When you're in a career path, you do X, Y, and Z, and the result is this promotion or this raise. And it's this lovely linear path. If I work hard, I get results. Then you jump ship and you start something from scratch. And that is not a linear process. I have definitely found that everything takes twice as long as ever expected and 3 times as much money. And whether you're in real estate or video or marketing, I think it's still the same, right? Doing something that involves other humans, that are multiple variables, it's not linear like a corporate job that you can just climb the ladder. And for me, that often knocked my confidence. I often was like, well, I guess that means I can't do it.
Right.
I guess I'm a failure. So fun side story. In 2015, I did a company launch party in St. Louis on top of this rooftop deck. I had, 50 of the most impressive women. I had all these speakers, 25 sponsors. I mean, it was ridiculously over the top. I stood up in front of these women, the top women in St. Louis, and said, Rise Collaborative is going to open early next year. And I really believe that. That's how naive I was to what it would take to get something like this off the ground.
Oh.
And, that was September 2015. I, for some reason, thought I was going to hit the door, raise the capital, design the space, find the space, design the space, and get it open by January 2016. Because that was logical. Now, I did get it open in early of a year, but it took me a full another year to do it, 2017.
Yes.
And I had many days that I was like, well, that was embarrassing, I'm done. And so I know because we have talked that your journey has had moments like that. And I think same thing with like real estate. Well, except for you guys are in such a hot market right now. But nonetheless, there are times.
It's not always been that way.
It's not always been that way. But when you're starting your marketing, and even though you're, on your way, there's still times where things are not going the way that you want them to go. How do you pick yourself up?
I think it's slowly, right? I mean, because it is exactly what you said, how long these things take. And when things are out of my control, that's when I have a hard time saying like, well, if I could just do that myself, if I could just, so I think that's been a learning part of it too, because it's not in my control right now.
Yes.
And so I can see, those items that really I think can bring under my control, which would make me feel better.
Yeah.
I have a startup coach,
Yes.
Arzu.
And she is a founding member of Rise and freaking amazing.
She is amazing. Met her, through Rise, and she actually had done this male-dominated panel that we did a couple of years ago. And she was navigating as an engineer and, working in several different kind of groups within some of these male companies. Anyway, she was fantastic in so many ways. And so I've been working with her for a while, but we participated in a party in Houston in last December, and they did a flame resistant clothing fashion show. Okay, like we've done those at a safety conference before, right? But not with a fashion show as part of it, right? I mean, this was like a big deal that they were trying to bring fashion to this.
Were there other companies?
So there were other companies, and so we were far enough along. I had good prototypes. I had good stuff that I thought, we have to get into this show.
This was last December.
Yeah, last
December
December,
2021.
correct.
Like a couple months
So,
ago.
This is
yeah.
exciting.
yeah,
Yes.
so we debuted, I mean, for the first time I got to see my clothes on somebody other than my sisters and my friends, right? Which was amazing. And it really validated what we were doing because the quality of our clothes was so important. But we're still so far from the actual product being here and finalized, that, I guess I'm just reflecting on that timelines and how important it is to just keep going, really, and just keep telling yourself, like Arzu tells me, you're a badass, and we all see it,
Whether you see it right now or not.
right, and why, if you don't, why don't you?
Yeah.
Right? If you don't, why don't you? And it's like, wow, everyone else sees you that way, so why don't you? And it was like, and that's when it just kind of flipped. That was like, well, I do see myself like that. So why would I not be reflecting that to someone like her who's been kind of coaching me this whole time? I think she found things that just needed to be said.
Yeah.
And then it was like, yeah, you're right. So being able to kind of come forward in that event with this mindset of it just made everything so much
I
better.
love that. Well, and I can imagine being in that environment with these people also doing what you're doing, potentially further along. I think a lot of us, when I could see if I were in your shoes, knowing that you're at a stage and you have this other place you want to be, there would have potentially been a part of it. It's like, well, what am I doing? I shouldn't even fit in the show. And just not like backing out.
Well, and part of it was that I had a size small, and these models were like a size 0, right?
So not
and
a small, more of like an extra small.
like an extra small, and I just had smalls, right? That was just, and so I'm the only one that really thought that was you know, it didn't fit them well. I mean, my whole point is that I want these to fit well. And here they were, but I think it was more than that, right? People didn't see that. I was the one that saw that. I'm critical. I'm definitely the most critical of what we're doing. And you know, I've gone through these prototypes and we've gone through all of this. We did finally place the order. So it is almost in the queue, at least in the factory. And we've been trying sample after sample after sample to get it right. And, you know, I think the one thing I've had to remind myself is that I am the person that we're solving this problem for, because when I put it on somebody else and they give me a slight bit of feedback, you're like, oh crap, well, it's not going to happen. Right. And another shout out to Jamie and Julie Halunga, one of the other members here that really hooked me the day I met Stacy. They said, Mel, you're at version 1. Version 1. Apple just came out with version 13, right? And so they were happy with V1. You got to get happy with V1, understanding you will continue to get feedback and you will iterate and you will make it all better, but you've got to be able to come out with that V1, which is better than what we have today.
Well, and don't let perfection get, you know, you gotta be okay with good enough.
And I've gotten such great feedback that I know it's good.
Right.
I put it on, I know it's good.
Yeah.
So it's good. We need to, you know, so.
Well, and I see that in a lot of people who are working for themselves or starting a company is, you know, I think we have a lot of messages from people who have made it, right? You see, you know, what is it that podcast everyone loves? How
I built this.
How I built this. And you're hearing these stories of this success. And I think it's so important to kind of go behind that and to show the ugly side of it and to show all the mistakes, because the reality is that's not the real path. I don't know any successful person that didn't fall on their face 10 times and fail. But I think we are wired to be so scared of failure, you know, and not want to give it that try. And the reality is you're not going to get better till you fall on your face. And falling on your face sucks. Sucks. I have had many of those experiences, and some of us have recent. But I wouldn't trade that. And I'm so much better for it. And I'm going to be crass for a minute. My counselor, who I talk about a lot because she changed my life, you know, she calls it, again, this is crude, so I apologize, but she calls it a shit-wrapped gift. And yeah, that's gross to think about. And sorry for putting that vision in your mind. But it is the reality. These are gifts. They're painful and awful and not joyful, but unfortunately, it's a paradox of you have to face the hard stuff to get to the good stuff. And we just want to surpass that. And so I'm curious how that lands when you hear that.
Well,
your response to that.
I have this flip calendar. My little sister gave me it this year, and it's just a motivational flip calendar. Every day there's something, and I think it was yesterday that said, growth and comfort don't coexist, right? And so there has to be this uncomfortable piece of it, and whether somebody else sees your uncomfortableness, or if it's you internally. I mean, I also have a therapist who I love very much, and I'm very open about. I think everyone deserves a great therapist. But when you think about those things, when you think about thoughts and feelings and where they are in your body and how they affect your body, when you start really tapping into that, I think that's when you can change the way you react to people, you respond to situations, how it makes you feel in your stomach, because we all know that feeling, and the more you can kind of have kind of comfort with the uncomfortableness, I think that's where the growth really happens. And you can really, and then you move past that, and then you move to kind of the next thing that you're working on. And I think that's, for me, really coming up is what's, you know, I describe it as like being on this roller coaster. Like, you're so excited and you're going up, you put yourself there. So you're like, did it for a reason. And you've got that anticipation that's coming, and you just are so excited what's over the edge, but you know your stomach's about to drop. And so that to me is, and then you do it again. And so that's where I'm at with getting ready for sales, right? And it's very uncomfortable for me. Although these will sell themselves, I have no question that we are just gonna launch off of that.
But something's gonna happen.
Sure.
That you didn't think through.
Oh, absolutely.
And you'll have to get back up.
Or that you couldn't have thought through.
You couldn't have thought through.
Like, that's the thing that, because you think you can think it through, but that's the thing.
You just can't. Well, and that reminds me, I probably, Corey and Marie's probably heard this story, maybe Beth too, 400 times. I repeat myself a lot. I was at an event, and this guy stood up on stage. His name was Jai Zhang. I'm butchering it, but I can send it to you guys are interested. He was was trying to build something. He wanted to be like the next Steve Jobs or whatever, right? And he left his job and he started to go, and you know, he had some major rejections. And he went to his wife and he's like, I just can't do it. I need it. Whatever. Go back and get my job. And she's like, I gave you 6 months, not 4. Get back out there. You know, no way. Oh, good. So what he did is he sought out rejection. He's like, I'm so scared of rejection. It feels so terrible. I mean, it's called aversion therapy, right? Where you face the thing that you hate. So he actively sought out rejection for 100 days and he blogged about it. And it went viral. And so because some of them were like literally, because to seek out rejection, you have to do like over the top things. And here are some of the over the top things he did. A police officer's car was stopped. He talked to him and asked if he'd drive his car. He lives in Texas, I think, or he was in Texas something. And he knocked on someone's door. And you know, he has this very thick accent. He's in this like soccer garb, you know, just stranger, and was like, "Can I play soccer in your backyard?" And then the one that went viral was during the Olympics, because this was back, you know, 2012 when I heard it. I think that's what the Olympics, so whatever. Side note, he went into Krispy Kreme's and he's like, "Hey, I'm really into the Olympics," and he filmed it because it went viral. Can you make me some Krispy Kremes in the symbol of the Olympic rings? Just like out of nowhere, some like stupid, bizarre request. And you know what's funny about all 3 of those examples? All 3 of them, they said yes.
Yeah.
He was shocked that he sought out rejection 100 days in a row, and not 100% of the time, but more. You would think none of those would be yes. But there were so many more times that he got yeses than he expected to get. And so it was like, not only is he building up this muscle, but he's also like getting things you would never expect to get. And I think we are the ones getting in our own way because it's scary. And it's weird. It's weird to ask a police officer to drive his car. I mean, let's be honest, that's weird. But you hear people like Sarah Blakely talking about some of the things she has done. And that's everything you're saying, I hear that in you.
That's ours who said the exact same thing. You are the only one getting in your own way, right? You just said it perfectly, because that is so true. And I think you can, again, be aware of it. When you're aware of it, I mean, there are some reasons that you want to be critical and you want to make sure that what you're doing is as best as you can do. You want to put out the best product you can for somebody. And I think what I found, going back to this like early conversation about having fun at work, I have always had fun at work. I worked with some of the greatest, smartest people for 18 years I spent at that company. They were doing something right. I was doing something right. Like it was a great time that I spent there, and I got to learn so many new things and meet all these great people. Like you can have fun at work, but it takes it to a different level when you've got passion in a different way. Yes. I mean, I have passion for helping people. This is the Amy speech. I have passion for, you know, helping save lives and protect the environment. And I do that by partnering with these energy companies. But realistically, if I can inspire a kid or a worker because of the clothing that she gets to wear now on the job, that is really cool, right? And it's not something I thought at all that I would be doing. But because there's this passion and it lights me up, it excites me in a way I didn't realize I was missing. Yeah. You know, and so I think that's where the entrepreneur community sparks that. It really does. And one of our taglines is really, you know, we're sparking confidence in people, and it's one clothing at a time. And it's you know, we're ready to take that next step and really get it out there and tell the story and see other people, you know, being empowered and inspired, you know, through what we're doing.
You guys can see why we picked her. Shocking that we picked her for the confidence and power. Those are the questions I have. We still have time. I am a time Nazi person, so just bear with me. We have 17 minutes if you're curious. I'm curious if you guys have any questions bubbled up, and I do see a couple people on Zoom. So if there's people that are watching that have questions, but I'm curious, and maybe if it's not a question, it's a comment. And if no one can think about it, I'm just gonna pick up that because I always do.
I have two things actually. One was, I think the hard part when you were saying like being in fashion, and this is PR, right? Like people talk about PR. It's like there's a store, you can look at the fashion show and it's like we killed it. We've got this clothes. I learned from all this stuff. We made this fabric and we imported it from there. And it's awesome. And it's not quite right. We're trying to make it better. We're not in production where we want to be. Like both of those are totally true.
Yeah.
And they're like two sides of the same coin. And I think that that's like towing the line between those two is like the whole, like your job as a business owner is to be focused on the next problem and like what you need to solve. And it makes it hard to just be like, I'm awesome and I'm crushing it. Like that is, for me, that's what came up was like, well, it's not my job to talk about how awesome I am. It's my job to solve the thing that I can't see right now.
Yeah. Well, and I think people are waiting for it just to be one.
Right.
And the reality is it's never just one.
Right.
You know, with
It's both
everything,
ends.
it's always both.
Right.
Right. And so I think you're bringing up a really good point about that.
It's like these are both true at the same time. My therapist to bring it.
Yeah.
That's it, like it's always and like don't say but, say and. It's like we are at this freaking fashion show and we're not ready for production and we will be, and this is where we're moving towards. I was curious, it was really interesting that you said the like where you first learned to kind of get confidence was through clothing. I thought that was such an interesting tie-in that the women that you worked with, I wondered if you could talk a little bit more about that. Because it's such a, I always think of you as like, Melanie always has the perfect thing on. Like whenever I'm like, whenever I see you at an event, and I never realized I thought that till today. And I was like, oh, she's really paying attention to that and putting her best foot forward. And of course she's gonna start a company that's specifically about that.
Right, I know, and it is such a reflection right now.
Yeah.
It is
You
because.
wouldn't have been able to know that going
Right,
forward.
and I was, so it's like specific examples I remember, there's these pictures of me kind of through the years. And the first thing I think I started to do was wear a cardigan, right? A cardigan was like step one.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, now I've got a cardigan. And then I wore like a scarf on my neck. I was a 19-year-old kid wearing a scarf and a cardigan, right? And I was going to my corporate job. And for years, I just kind of did that. And then I graduated to the blazer. And honestly, the blazer like gave me, because I think that was because that's what the men were wearing. It was no longer what the women were wearing, because the women still were wearing probably cardigans, right? And then, so got the blazer, and then it was dresses. And then I wore dresses and high heels like this. And I think that was just easiest because you could throw a blazer on this, you could take the blazer off this. And I think that again, just being a little more deliberate with that is important. And you know, Heather Hope with the House of Color, to give them a plug, if you've not done a color
Another founding
consult,
member who's amazing.
absolutely, this color consult, I would say, changed my life because I was realizing it, you know, I get to choose whatever style I wanted to wear, but it was really the colors. And you have just a very short amount of time to make an impact on somebody, right? And it's very short. They will judge you within seconds. So if you walk in that room less than where you feel like you should be, because everyone knows that you know your stuff, you've got to make sure you feel that way. And I don't know that I realized how important that was until you talk about those first moments, right? And I do remember somebody when I was in high school said something to me like, you just have your own style. Like there's nothing, I'm not trying to be trendy. I don't, and so for you to say that, you know, you've noticed at least that, I think it's interesting because it's delivered in a way, but not necessarily. Yeah, right.
You're not trying to be someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I still wear my skinny jeans and I can't really do the.
And I have the side part.
I tried that too. It didn't, you know, I still am on the side.
I was watching, I watch way too much TikTok, don't judge me. And this person.
Design that way.
There's this person that's like, you know, if you do these things, you're chuggy. And I was like, done, like every single.
What?
So there's a term that actually was, okay.
Oh.
But she sounded really
Give us hip.
Actually, a St. Louis girl, we coined the term chuggy, and it's a Gen Z kind of term, and it's this idea of like not cool, passe. Like,
Oh, okay.
like rough.
Chuggy?
Chuggy. You can even Google it. CHUEGG. Yeah.
Where's the connotation? Where is it from? You also
Yeah. Google about it.
Do we want to be chuggy or no?
Yeah. Well,
No.
no, it's like, no, that's chuggy.
You
So
don't
that's
want
like the whole like skinny jeans, side part.
The side part is that. Oh, that's bad news.
I mean, I heard the term, I think in February, or it was before Anna Marie's time. It was when we had an employee named Victoria. And I went up to her afterwards and I was like, why don't you just let it out? And everything that they did, I was chuggy. And she's like, oh yeah, but
Okay.
Because that's just who I am. And the more I lean into my quirky flavor, the more the people who are gonna enjoy my flavor, as we were talking earlier, the better I'm gonna feel. And I think that's what I'm hearing you say is key for you.
Well, and for both of you guys, right? I know that we tell you how great you are, right? Everybody, Beth's session was fantastic. If you haven't gotten to watch that,
Watch it on Rice.
She's got this uber successful company. As soon as I have money for video, she is my gal.
Yes.
Right? I mean, she has helped people be really successful, and so we see that. We see the confidence that you exude when you walk in these doors, and you kind of set that model tone and that behavior for kind of how it works around here.
And the funny thing is, the real story is I'm highly insecure.
And that's where you go behind the scenes
inside.
and have a chat with her, what her struggles are, what's going on in real life. Behind the camera, you see those things, and it's just kind of like, why do we do that to ourselves? And so it's been very recent that I've just, my vision board this year has right in the middle, it says, wake up and truly shine. Right? And you want your first thought in the morning to be positive.
Yes.
Right? Why would it be anything less? And I just have flipped that, and it's been so easy to rise and really shine, and the day is better, the thoughts that come after that are better, the feelings that come with that are better, the people you attract are better.
I love that.
And I think those things, that's what we can control.
Exactly.
Immediately.
And that's why one of our core values here is shine theory. This idea of I don't shine if you don't shine. And actually, the way that I wake up, I know it's terrible to start your day by grabbing your phone, but let's be honest, I do.
Everyone does.
Okay. The very first thing I see on my phone is at 7 in the morning, it says you won't get today back. And it's just that reminder that I won't get it back. What am I doing with my day?
Yep.
And
so my home screen, I learned that was a tip to
Yeah.
have your home screen say something, because you could, that home screen doesn't require you to tap anything or go anywhere. And mine says, keep focused on the goal. You are the only one that can create a healthy life.
ooh, I just got chills. Well, that is a perfect segue. Round of applause. I knew that I was going to thoroughly enjoy this conversation, even though I'm a little delirious. I flew home to St. Louis at 11 o'clock on Monday, left the next day at 9:30 to Orange County, got home last night at 9, and then did a talk this morning. I was like, why do I do this to myself?
She secretly likes it.
I do. I secretly like it.
Maybe not so.
Yeah, and I'm ready to pass out. So hopefully I wasn't too off today. I just want to thank you guys for coming. I know that it's a snowy day. I know that it's quality over quantity today, but I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. And you are a shining example of why Rice is important and makes me feel really good about what we've built and the impact we have, and that we're going to continue to make impact. It just may look different. And so I'm sure you've heard the news that here in Denver, the landlord will be taking over the operations of the space. Truth be told, I'm currently looking for a job myself, and I'm like, I might become a member here. Like, you might see me here. Because what I found is, in some of the interviews I've been having, I'll meet people at coffee shops, and I'm like, oh, I'm reminded of all the reasons why coffee shops don't work.
Right.
Like, it couldn't find a seat, the loudness, it was just all the screaming kids, the dogs, it's dirty. I was like, oh, this is why I built it. And even if I'm not running it, I might have my job here.
Yes.
So by all
Well,
means, this
thank
is more of a
you.
transition than anything else.
Thank you for building such a great community and opportunity. I told you, it changed my life. Not only the free.
We do cool
We
stuff.
did. Full game plug. I think I have a before and after. I'm happy to share it with you guys. But literally, those were life-changing moments. So thank you for what you've built, and those of us that have been touched by you. It's very many of us. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Somehow I made it through without tears. They are starting, so we're gonna have to end it. I do really encourage you. I know some of you you're just starting, and it could be really weird and feeling. I do really encourage you to come to Alicia's event. Alicia's life-changing, truly life-changing. I am so lucky to call her a friend, and she has touched my life in just crazy amount of ways. And so, I really believe about going out on a bang, and we will be doing that. So I hope to see you all there. And like I said, I'm probably gonna be a member, so you're probably gonna see me here on a somewhat regular basis. So thank you, and have a wonderful